Hello and welcome to this video, and today we're going to go through a cinematograph type of video. And a cinematograph is basically a photo, but it's a mix of a video as well. So one part of the photograph is moving and the rest is completely static. So here are some examples that I found from a website, and you can kind of see that generally the idea is that one part is just waving in the wind or something, and it's quite peaceful, it's quite nice to watch, whereas the other parts are completely static. So I will show you how I made this clip here. Something that's quite funny actually is that my lens has got a polarizing filter on it, and my light does as well. So I can turn off all reflections, which is really strange. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, let's just jump straight into it. So the first thing I did was just make the room. And this is just a basic room, and I just extruded out a window here, and then the rest of the room can kind of be ignored. I didn't really want to concentrate on anything else. I just wanted this to be a focus shot. So I just focused on this part. And this is just a window frame. There is no glass in there because I just want this to be the suggestion of a frame behind the curtains. I didn't want this to affect any render time or anything like that. I just wanted to just have a kind of frame in there. And for lighting, I just had a very basic HDRI. I think it's one from a HDRI Haven. It's called Waterbuck Trail. The settings were quite dark because I didn't really want it to be contributing much to the scene. But then I did actually add an area light and then make sure that that was contributing quite a lot. So if I show you the actual area light here, so if I move this away, the room is going to be quite dark, but then if I bring this back, the room is a bit lighter. I actually did a test with a portal light, and I found that adding the portal to the window actually had the render time to be quite a lot slower. And I think that might be because generally the room is being illuminated mostly by an area light anyway, so I don't think it was so necessary here, and because it took longer I just removed it. I think also because it's quite a big window, a lot of light doesn't have any problems getting into the room anyway. And as you can see here, I did adjust some settings onto the HDRI, so I just got the saturation and then just reduced that, because I think originally if I set that to 1 it was quite green and I didn't really want much color in this scene, so just turn that down. I also increased the reflection strength. The only real time you can see the HDRI in this animation is in the reflection of the mirror, so I just increased the strength of the reflection in that. So I can actually show you here. So I added some walls. I'll just drop that in here. So here is the reflection strength. Put that up to 100. You'll see that that is now completely blown out. So I thought that the reflection could be lighter, so this is actually the iMesh Asset Manager. You can just go through all the settings and adjust things how you like. So I found that to be quite helpful, and I set that to 10. So that was kind of gave the effect that I was wanting to do. The next thing I did was just add some walls. This is actually iMesh Marble that I made recently, and in Marble what you can do is you can get like book matched marble, and what that means is that you get the marble and then you get all the slices and then you kind of put them to make a kind of pattern. So you can kind of see here that it's almost like a reflection of the piece below, and I thought that would look quite nice. For the actual floor, what I did was just get this floor, and let me just turn this one back off, and I just went around the room and selected all these edges, and then like this, not these ones, let's just remove these, and this one and this one, yeah, something like this. And I just did Shift-P, and then I just got that and then converted it to a curve. And I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video in the actual ArcViz side, because the main part is going to be on the cinematograph stuff. So I'm just going to quickly breeze over this and kind of assume you know what I'm doing, or if you want to know more, perhaps look through some of our other tutorials. We probably cover some of this. I think in the dining room one we covered some of this stuff, so I'm just going to quickly breeze over this. So now we have a curve. This one actually has a modifier turned on, so I'm just going to just remove the outer one, that one, and the curve selected. I can then go to mesh and add Archipack and floor, this one, and select the floor, and then I can then go to Archipack and from curve. Okay, that fills that, and if you look here there is actually some tiles, but to see the tiles you just add a slight bevel and then you get that. So that's what I did here. and you can see that. I actually missed off this piece, but that doesn't matter because it was behind the curtain anyway, but just make sure you do that if you do it. Okay, the next thing I did was just add a bed, and this is actually a new bed that will be coming to iMesh. I'm actually quite happy with how the creases turned out with this one, so they look quite realistic. I actually made this specifically for this tutorial, so this will be uploaded to iMesh exclusive, so if you have exclusive, you've got to download this for no additional cost. And to add these objects into the scene, I just added these things, and I just did a shift and right click and then went to the iMesh Asset Manager and then just went to here and did, for example, decoration, and you could just append the object that you want into the scene. So that's what I did here. Just added the bed, this one, and the blanket. For the blanket, this is also available on iMesh, but what I did to it was just desaturate it a little bit and increase the value so I can make it a bit lighter, a bit whiter, because I think it was too red and I didn't want much in the scene. Okay. The next thing I did was just add this side table, and this was literally just a cube. I found something on Pinterest that looked quite nice. So it was just a cube which I just then beveled the edges and then gave it the same material as the floor to try to mix colors as much as possible. And on the we actually had this this product here, and I found that the magazines were actually falling off another magazine, so I thought that actually I did quite a nice effect here. So I think I actually exaggerated that a little bit more. And then I added this lamp, which was super basic. It's literally just a cylinder, and then I just duplicated that cylinder up. Let's just move it over here and show you an example. And then what I did was just grab these and then press E and Z, and there we go, we have another cylinder. I then added a solidify onto that so that it has some thickness, and then I can make that material like a glass kind of mix. So nothing too crazy, it was just glossy white glass. I actually added another light here, which was just going to add some nice light in from the side. Actually, in my last video, people had so many comments that people were telling me that I can turn off lights in the outlier, and that is fair. You can turn it off, and I was saying that you can't turn it off here, which would be very ideal. And my argument was that if you can instance loads of lights, and then if there was an off button, if you turn it off there, then it can turn off all the instances too. That'd be really cool, but I can turn it off in the outlier, so let's just do that here. Okay, and that just added just a little bit of a warmer light, and then that was just casting a little bit of stuff on the side. I try to make sure that all my materials kind of matched what I was going for. I wanted it to be as colorless as possible, so quite a clear, pale feeling render. And then once that was done, I was then ready to add the curtain. So I'm just going to move to another Blender file now to show you how the curtain was made, because this gets a little bit complicated and it's a little bit cluttered in this one here, so it'll be easier to show you in another one. Okay, so to make the curtain, all I did was just add a plane. And oh, actually, what I did do was when I made the plane, I made sure that the plane fit into this edge here. So I made sure that it was, yeah, where I wanted it to be, and scaled. Get it to fit how you want it to, and then you can continue. But how I did it was basically add this, and I just went into here and right clicked and clicked subdivide a few times, too many times. And then I just grabbed this top edge, went over to here and added a vertex group and assigned these to the vertex group. I then also added a shape key. This is the base shape key, and this tells it that this is the base of the object. And then I added another one here, and that is what we edit. So with this one selected, I go into edit mode and scale these on the x-axis in this case, like this. And now what happens is that with this shape key, you can turn it to 1 and to 0, and you can see that it's changing. So what we can do with that is animate it. So if I go over to here, hover over it and press I, and then go to frame 30, for example, and put that to 1 and press I again. And now what will happen is over this time, this will move over to the shape key that I was looking for. And that's what we'll use to make the pleats. So if I just get this and go to here and click cloth, I think I just did the preset silk because why not? I also actually increased the steps to something like 12, and then I went down to shape and pin group to group, and that tells it that the group that I made earlier was going to be where the object is pinned, and that cannot move. I then also added some self collisions. I increased the quality and added some self collisions, something like 0.005. You can play with these settings, but I found this kind of to work fine. So what I do now is just click play, and now you can see that this is being generated. And something went a bit wonky. Oh, I think that might be because I just set it to smooth shading. So we'll try it again. Okay. And the idea now is to leave it to rest, just to wait until it kind of comes to a stop. And then what we can do is apply that and then move on. So I'm just going to leave this just for a second. Okay, that is great. So that is perfect. What I'm going to do now is then apply the cloth. Oops, okay, I need to remove the shape keys, and then I can apply this. You do Control A and then it applies. So now we have a curtain that's ready for some simulation. So what I'm going to do now is just add the cloth back again and go back to frame 0, there we go, and put this to silk, and we can go back to the collisions pin groups and the collisions, and I'm sure that there is an easier way, and I'm waiting for the comments to tell me the easier way, but this works fine. So what we can do now is simulate that, but we can also add some wind. But one thing that we did actually have was a floor. So what you can see here is I have a floor and some walls, and you kind of want that to be interacting with it. So you can add the floor now, or you can add it when you're actually simulating the fabric. So you can kind of get it to look and feel against the floor how you want it to, and even hit the wall if there's a wall to hit it against. But all you need to do is then set this to a collision, and now this will collide with it. You may need to give it some thickness, so I'm just going to extrude this out. That's actually why on this wall I've actually got a solidify modifier, just to give it some thickness, otherwise they might get the fabric trying to go inside the object. So that is perfect. So now if we do a simulation, all we need to do is add some wind. So let's just add a force field and wind, and if I just press play, this is just going to blow the wind. Oh, you can see also now that it has reacted to the floor, so that might be a nice effect that you're going for. Okay, so I actually applied that it was against the floor. I simulated it and then applied it again, so now we have something going against the floor. So now if I was to press play, it's already kind of how I want it to be. So we can see that the wind is now not doing anything. Whereas if we set this to something like 100, it will now start blowing the curtain. And it's quite subtle, but that's also what we kind of want. A cinematograph is usually quite subtle, and it's just something moving in the image to attract the eye. So that is cool. But you'll see that if I set it to 100, the curtain will kind of blow and then it will stay there. But we want it to be waving. So one thing we can do is adjust the strength over time. So if I set this to 0, press I, and then I'll move this to 10 actually, and press I again, because then that gives it time for the cloth to settle before the simulation starts. So then I just move it to 11, and then set that to 100, and then move that to something like 60, and then set that to, oh, actually press I again, and then move it 1 frame across, and then set that to 0. And we press I, oops, I again. So now this will change over time. So if we look here, it will start blowing and the curtain will start blowing, and then the curtain will stop blowing again. Okay, I might move these across actually, because I feel like it was kind of blowing and then it was stopped, and then before it came back again. So I'm just gonna move that back. And you can kind of do this for as long as you like. The longer the loop, the more realistic it is. So what I did now was then set this to 200 frames. So if you do make a loop, you can kind of make it as long as you like, but in this case I set it to 200. You can kind of then leave it to do whatever it likes. I'm actually going to loop this again. So I'm just going to copy these and move these across to something like this. So then it blows, then stops, and then it blows again. And we'll just see how that kind of looks. So now this is the blowing effect, and I think that's quite nice. I think that's quite subtle. You can obviously add turbulence. You can make this wind as realistic as you like, but just for the purposes of this video, that's fine. Now we have a curtain and we have the frames. What we want to do is be able to manipulate these frames. It's almost like shape keys. It's almost like there is data in that which we want to then modify. And I found that the easiest way to do that is to export it and then re-import it back in again as an MDD file. And then we can then use that. I'm sure someone's going to educate me that there is an easy way, but whatever, that is also fine. So what you need to do is go to the add-ons and make sure you have enabled MDD. And you can see here that you can import and export. So I'm just going to select this and I'm going to export that now to an MDD, Lightwave Point Cache. Actually, before I do that, I'm actually going to apply the rotation and scale. And then I'm going to File, Export. Okay, so that has now exported. So let me just duplicate this one and move this one over. That will just be my saved copy if I need to. And with this one, I'm then going to just apply the scale again. So this is now the object, and we want to then re-import what we have done previously. So if I go to File and Import and Point Like, and then select the one that we want, Export to. So now that this will then have all of the frames on it. And you'll see it has moved. That's also fine. We can then just move that back down again. I probably should have applied the location actually. Now what we want to do is open up the non-linear animations, and that will be under this one here. So I believe it's plane, this one here. And now we have this, and if you click this button here, we now have this kind of, I don't know what it's called, strip, which we can then move across and kind of place it where we want it to. And what we want to do is then blend the start and the end. So to do that, we can just press Shift D and it makes a copy. And then we can move this one over. Let's just move this over to maybe -100. Actually, let's move this over just 50 to here. Okay, and then I'm going to move this one over so it's at 100. And then we can then also reduce this. So let's set this back down to 150. So now we have taken off 50 and we have moved that start to the end, and now we want to blend them somehow. So if we press N and select the first one, which is the top one, and set that to combine under the active strip, and we click auto blend, you can see that it's added a blend, and then that will then start turning off that one before it turns on the other, and we want that one to have the same. I found we don't need to change this. This can be as it is, but we just need to set this to also auto blend. So now if I press play, if I just highlight this one and press play, you can see that the fabric is kind of blowing as you made it blow, and then the first one is stopping and then the next one is coming brought in, and hopefully there's not going to be a jump where it's worked. So that has now worked. You can see now it's just going to keep looping perfectly, and it's blended. That is your looping cinemagraph. What I then did later on was actually modify this slightly. So you can add a subdivision surface to make the creases a little bit nicer. I then also duplicated it. I then also added a few loops here. Let me just actually localize this one and then did one over here, just on the edges. And then I selected this edge, and this edge, and deleted these faces. Actually, let me just add another loop here and delete these ones. Okay, and you'll see that these actually move still as well, so it's almost as if it's just the end piece. But I found that curtains, they always look fake in ArchViz if they don't have the seam around their edge. It's funny because you don't realize what's missing until you add it. Anyway, so what I did there was just then add a solidify modifier and set it a bit lower, 0.001. And now if we go back to that, we now have a curtain and the edge. So if we just move that, that moves how you want it to. Also, this looks like it's intersecting that face. So perhaps with the solidify we could set that to 0, and now it's going to be either way. And you can just adjust this to be thicker or not thicker if you like. So that is what I did. I then had 2 curtains, so I did that twice. So now if we move across, you'll see that it blends quite nicely with both of them. It does kind of go through the wall here, but it was just going to be a tutorial and I really wasn't too fussed with that going through the wall. But if you want to make that yourself, that's something to keep an eye out for. And you'll see that there are many other opportunities to add some small things to just happen in the video. Charles, who is the co-owner of iMesh, he suggested turning on the light and then turning off the light again. But at that point I'd already rendered it, so I wasn't going to go back. So for the rendering, I actually used eCycles because I found that the render time was about 6 minutes with eCycles and about 11 minutes without eCycles. And I don't know how this works. That is simply magic to me. But it literally halved my render time. And so 6 minutes over 150 frames. So that is 6 frames times 150, so that's 900 minutes, divided by 60, and that's 15 hours. So I was able to render that kind of overnight and throughout the day, and I'm pretty happy with the results. For the actual render settings, I actually had it set to the samples at 175, which was very, very low. And so it was still very noisy, and the denoise I had to work quite hard. but then I'll explain in a second why that wasn't such a bad thing. But once it denoised, it kind of cleared up most of it. But if I was to do this again, I would definitely render it, I know, even up to 1,000, even for a still image. You want it to be kind of as high as possible, obviously in as much time as you have to render, but 175 kind of worked for me. And yeah, these are my render settings. Oh, I also rendered it in almost 4K, because what happens is denoising works a lot better at higher resolutions. Perhaps the AI was trained with higher resolution images, but if you set that to a high image and then lower the samples, you can kind of get a better image than if you just keep it at a lower resolution. So yeah, I let that render, and then I had the frames, and then I'll show you what I moved on to. So what I did next was move on to Premiere. I think you can do this in Blender, but I wasn't too sure about the masking things myself, and I use Premiere. I've got it open pretty much all the time anyway, so I just dragged my individual frames into here, and then I could make the sequence. And these are just literal just copy and pastes. And then what I did was, on the bottom one, I just froze that. So if I moved it across here, this one doesn't move, because what I found was that the denoiser, it kind of changed over time, and it kind of made it kind of a grainy effect. But if we look at some cinemagraphs, you'll find that parts of the image, some parts are completely static, so there's not even any noise changes. It's as if this particular, only this part of the image is what's moving. So I kind of used that to my advantage, that the denoiser was still a bit grainy and kind of made some horrible effects over the image. So what I did was create this one over the top, and then I created a mask here. So this mask just highlights the only part of the image which is moving, and then the rest is going to be completely static. So if you actually look at the video of this, you'll be able to see a little bit of grain over the top of this cushion, which it was fine for this case. I could have even cut this out even if I wanted to, but that was fine. I then added a feather onto this so that it kind of blends nicely into, and it's not just going to be a complete cut. And then I then just kind of looped it over and over and over again, because some applications don't allow you to loop videos, such as Instagram and Facebook, and I wanted to post it on social media. That's also why I did it in Square, because I wanted it to be more of a social media thing as a looping thing. I think that's it. There wasn't really anything too crazy, just an area light, HDRI, and a new bed. That was actually probably the most time was making the bed for this video. So yeah, I hope you like this video. It's something a little bit different. I love ArcViz, and I do it professionally in a job, and I find myself just doing rooms, and I never get to try something else. So I thought I might use the iMesh YouTube as an excuse to make some interesting ArcViz images, like maybe even some abstract ArcViz things, because the theory is kind of the same. The camera setup and everything, it all requires the same thing, same lighting. So I might explore that. If anyone has some interesting abstract ArcViz ideas, then shoot them my way, and I'll try to recreate your idea. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you soon, hopefully.